Hey, good afternoon, everyone, or morning, depending on where you are located. As participants continue to join us, let me welcome you today to our first ever TPE Story Short. This is a new bi-monthly series where we will have the opportunity to hear from professionals from both candidate and employer perspectives to share a personal narrative, a personal story about an experience that is relevant for current times and to our members. We are really excited today to kick it off with one of our TPE committee members, Nakia Campbell, and I will introduce her in a minute. But today's session is a TPE story short about the experience of a job seeker, specifically looking beyond student affairs to land for now employment. Nakia Campbell, I'll let her introduce herself here in a minute, but she not only is a member of our TPE steering committee, but also serves as the Senior College Persistence Advisor for Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, or SEO. And you'll have the chance to hear her short narrative to talk about her experience job searching and some of the difficulty, and then how she landed in this role and has really made a cohesive experience between that and staying connected to student affairs and staying involved in the field. It's a very short story. Today in our program, again, it's only 30 minutes. We will have about a 15-minute narrative followed by question and answers. As participants, you'll notice a question and answer section in your chat feature. Feel free, there's both a chat and a Q&A. Feel free to use the Q&A to ask your questions, and then we can make sure that we then get those questions to Nakia, and I will come back in to help moderate that after she is done. So with that, I'm thankful for you being here today, Nakia, and I will turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kirsten. So excited to share my story with all of you. Just wanted to first start off by introducing myself, and then I'll work my way back to how I landed in the position that I have now. Hoping that everyone can hear me okay. So, my name is Nakia B. Campbell. As Kirsten said, I serve as a Senior College Persistence Advisor at a nonprofit called Sponsors for Educational Opportunity. It is a nonprofit that is based in New York City, but also has an office in San Francisco. But before we landed there, what was my journey and how did that journey land me in a student affairs or higher ed adjacent role? First, it's helpful to know that my background in student affairs is in housing and residence life. I did about 5 years in housing and residence life. As a graduate student at DePaul University, I had an assistantship in multicultural affairs and also a practicum in residence life. And then after residence life, I did a small stint in academic advising. So for me, as a job seeker, before I landed this role, I really felt as though I had a wide range of experiences in my wheelhouse. And for me, never expected that I would be in a position to find difficulty in a job search. This job search occurred in 2019. So while it wasn't the days of COVID, it still was a time of transition for me. The reason I needed to job search in the first place is because I'm in a student affairs marriage. My partner is also in student affairs. And for this particular job search, I was a trailing spouse. If you're familiar with what it means to be a trailing spouse, great. For those who aren't, just means that your partner has taken an opportunity and then you are the spouse that is trailing and will need to secure employment when you land where you land. So for us, our story begins in 2019 when my husband had the opportunity to take a new opportunity in New York City. We were living in Florida at the time, and I had just newly transitioned into my first trailing spouse role as an academic advisor after spending that 5 years in housing and residence life professionally. So for me, it was very abrupt, but still exciting because it was a great opportunity for my partner. One of the things that I think really impacted my framework for how I understood 2019 was all of the successes that I had previously had with difficult job searches. I've had challenging job searches before, but always seemed to land right in student affairs, right in a position that ultimately aligned with whatever my vision and mission was for myself at that time. So when we moved to Florida, I I got married in June, interviewed for a position in July, started in August. Very seamless. That was 2018. So when 2019 came and we decided to move to New York so that my husband could take the position, um, assumed that I would have similar successes in the field because I had so much experience in my wheelhouse: multicultural affairs, residence life, and now academic advising. So when we land in New York, I did all of the things that one thinks that a job seeker should do to land a job in our field. Just prior to our move, we attended the NASPA annual conference in Los Angeles. And even on my name tag, I wrote job seeker moving to New York, looking to network. So even then at NASPA, I was already doing the things that we encourage you to do as a job seeker, is to make sure that you're not job searching in silence and that you're not keeping your job search a secret, that you are using your network and letting folks know, here's the opportunity that I'm trying to pursue, here's the area that I'm trying to go into, who do you know that can maybe support me in getting connections and creating opportunities if they aren't already there. So for me, job searching, something I was so familiar with, something that I felt like I'm going to find something. I'm moving to New York City. This won't be difficult. Ended up being much more challenging than I expected. And through the challenge that I encountered in that job search is how I landed in my student affairs adjacent position. So in addition to the things that I did, which I think are important, networking, letting folks know that you're searching, I also had, when faced with the challenge of not really getting a lot of responses, really sit back and pause and reevaluate my strategy for how I was making connections or figuring out where I fit. One of the things that was really transformative for me was starting to have conversations with folks outside of the functional areas that I expected that I was going to go into. I was really searching for a lot of academic advising related positions, a lot of student support related positions, some multicultural affairs positions, things that were very much in my wheelhouse in the stereotypical ways that they were. I was looking at colleges and universities, New York City and the metro area. I had lots of options. So for me, it was very much, I was stuck in the mode that I was used to for how I apply for jobs, heavily using the TPE job search board. If you don't know, that's a great place to search for opportunities that are posted. So living on the TPE job board. Also, there are other job boards that are very popular in our field, also on those job boards looking for positions, and really aggressively applying for all the things, right? Everything that I felt like was a fit for my next step. What I began to realize is that the New York market was much more competitive than I expected. While it is a big market, everyone wants to be in New York, right? So that is where I began to realize that although I had a wealth of experience and I had this incredible network, everyone knew Nakia was job searching. Everyone was tapping their resources to try to get me connected. I began to hit some walls. Another wall that I somewhat created for myself is in my dual student affairs relationship. My partner is in housing and residence life, and for me, after we decided that we didn't want to both be in housing and residence life, so he has continued in that path, and I decided to pivot into some other functional areas, particularly on the academic side of the house. So for me, a lot of my network was housing and residence life folks. That's fine. But what that generated were a lot of leads that I couldn't really capitalize on because one of the things that I was committed to was not re-entering housing at this point in our career, in my career and his. We wanted to live in the same place. I didn't want to be a live-in professional. I wanted to take a break from that side as we worked on some other aspects of what it meant to be in our student affairs couple. So for me, that killed so many potential opportunities. What I had to ask myself was, is this a non-negotiable? And for me, it was. So through so many connections, I began to talk to other people in functional areas, and I began to broaden my scope of what I might be open to. Me broadening my scope of what I would be open to is eventually what allowed me to be so open to make the leap to looking outside of student affairs. Pretty much what I decided was, I've done all the things that I know to do. What else can I do? That is when I utilized LinkedIn, which I had never done for job searching. I didn't even know you could job search on LinkedIn. And that is where I found the position that was posted for the job that I have now. It was not an easy transition in my head to consider, do I want to leave the field? Because for me, if you're not working at, for me at the time, if you're not working at a college or university, then you're not in higher ed and student affairs in the same way. So I really struggled with that for a little bit. One of the most transformative conversations that I had, and I encourage you all to have both mentors and sponsors in your life, but also to expose yourself to people who, through one conversation, can really challenge you to think about how you're approaching things. I had a conversation with Tom Ellett, who at the time was at NYU and has now moved on to, I believe, Quinnipiac. And it was a 28-minute conversation. I was connected to him through one of my TPE committee members. And the original conversation was supposed to be, me deciding if I wanted to leave the field. And if I was going to leave the field, what was that going to look like? By the time Tom and I chatted, I had already been offered the position at the job that I have now as a senior college persistence advisor. So in that conversation, I was more able to more specifically say, here's the opportunity that I've been presented with. I have concerns about taking it because it feels like such an abrupt shift, and it feels like I'm giving up on the field and pivoting in a way that I didn't expect to pivot. And it was a great 28-minute conversation. And Tom said, write a love letter to student affairs. And in it, write all the things you love about student affairs and all the things that you think you may miss by taking this opportunity that's higher ed adjacent. And he said, wait a year. He encouraged me to wait a year. I did not wait a year to open it and review it. But he said, put in an envelope, wait a year, open it up. And if you still feel like you're missing those pieces from student affairs, then you know that you can walk away from this position because you're not getting the things that align with whatever your vision is for your career. And it sounds so simple, but that was such a transformative moment for me because what I ended up writing in that love letter to student affairs were so many of the aspects of the role that I have now. I wanted to engage students. I wanted to do some sort of holistic development. I wanted to be connected with students who were having a collegiate experience. And I particularly wanted to serve students from marginalized and minoritized populations and those who are first generation. Those are all things that I get in my current role. What I didn't think about was there's so many different ways to do the incredible work that we do. And because I have been so reflective about what is my actual mission and goal, how do I actually want to serve students and people and stakeholders? Once I did that, my For Now job ended up being such a great fit for all the aspects that I seek in the ways that I seek to be fulfilled in my professional career. So for me, even though at the time it felt like For Now, it really challenged me to think about how even a For Now position can both be transformative, can be fulfilling, and really set you up for what's next. Do I long to be back on a college or university campus? I think so. At some point I will. But there's still so much that I'm getting out of my current For Now position that is truly preparing me for what's next. So what is my For Now position? As Kirsten said, I work for Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, or SEO, and it's a nonprofit that has many programs. One of the programs that it is most well known for is the College Scholars Program, and that's the program that I'm a part of. So students who are a part of our program actually enter in high school, and they work with our high school department for 4 years. They are New York city public school students. And they are selected not just because they are academically talented, because they have the motivation and drive to be successful both in high school and college. So in high school, they get 720 additional hours of reading and math over 4 years. And then after they graduate high school, they transition to our program, which is College Scholars. We have about 1,000 scholars across the country, mostly at top tier institutions. And in my role, I provide academic, career, and personal counseling. So what that looks like is helping students to select classes, helping students to navigate financial aid, students who experience challenges on campus, whether it's interpersonal issues with roommates, difficulty talking to professors. The full gamut of what a student would experience on a college campus is what my role is to help to support them through that. And we are so proud that we have a 90% graduation rate for all of our scholars, which is incredible compared to those who don't have similar access to a program like ours. So if I had to do it all again, I wish I would have known that it's okay to take a leap in a higher ed adjacent or student affairs adjacent role. How I've maintained contact and connection with student affairs in the ways that I'm used to is by still remaining connected to NASPA. Some of the things that I have really valued are both working with the placement exchange as a steering committee member this year, as a committee member last year. In 2019, I also participated in the NASPA undergraduate student conference, where I served as a facilitator, working with undergraduate students who are interested in pursuing student affairs. So I've always had ways that I've been committed to staying connected. And one of the things I did when I started my new job was when I negotiated my for now employment, I said, one of the things that's most important to me is being connected and involved in my professional association. So if I take this role, it's really important to me that even though you all at SEO don't know much about NASPA, you may hear my newborn in the background. Even though you all don't know much about NASPA, please know that it is really important to me, and participating in TPE, participating in NASPA, in these leadership roles is super important to me and something that I want to negotiate for. And I was able to. So what did I end up doing? I exposed a nonprofit to all the resources NASPA has to offer, the placement exchange TPE has to offer as far as a job board. And I exposed a whole new group of folks to our field and what we have to offer. So even though it was for now employment for me, I really helped to move their organization forward by exposing them to all these great resources we have to offer. So I will stop there and give you all a chance to ask questions, and I can expound on anything else that you all may be thinking about as it relates to things I've mentioned in my story. Wow, 15 minutes goes fast, Kirsten.
Well, thank you, Nakia, for being our very first storyteller. That was a really great story, and you had a lot of poignant elements of your story that you shared. As a reminder, everyone feel free to put some questions in the Q&A. I did have a few that came in to just me on the chat. So Nakia, my first question for you is, you talked about mentors and sponsors and connecting with them to help provide kind of guidance and advice, as well as knowing that you're job searching. The question that came in is, how did you actually go about finding your mentors and sponsors?
Gotcha. So for me, I definitely have been intentional. You can really hear my newborn in the background. I just became a parent a few weeks ago. So the newborn that you may hear in the background, he's brand new. So we're just going to be patient with him as he navigates whatever my husband is helping him to navigate. But mentors have always been a key point of my professional development. I've always been very intentional about when I meet people or work with people whom have an inspiring story or have similar professional values or things that they excel at, to keep those people in my network. So not all mentors look the same for me. Some of my mentors are people that I'm very intentional about reaching out to, giving them updates every 3 to 6 months. Hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm passionate about. Other folks that I consider mentors are more observational, people I watch, connect with on LinkedIn. So for this particular search, it was a lot of me scheduling quick chats and emails so that I could give folks the narrative about what was happening and why I was searching and what specifically I was looking for. It's really important that when you're using your network and mentors to help you search, that you give them some concrete ideas about what are non-negotiables and what aren't. For me, it was really important for me to share with folks, here are some things that I absolutely need in a position, and here are some ways that I absolutely need to thrive. So that just looks like being honest, staying in communication. And for me, it's also making sure a relationship is mutual. Don't surprise someone and just all of a sudden say, hey, you're my mentor. Say, hey, I'm interested in establishing a regular mentorship type relationship with you. Here are the things I'm looking for in mentorship. Here are the things that I hope that I can give you. Is that something that you're interested in? It's not awkward to ask people that at all. And I've done it many, many times.
Great, thank you. And the worst they can say is no, which you wouldn't have a yes if you didn't ask them in the first place. Another question that
Absolutely.
came in your opinion, should people continue to look for openings if they currently are in a position, especially concerned if they were to get a new position, they may be the first one cut due to COVID layoffs and furloughs, since they'd be one of the newest employees?
So I think that you have to be very cognizant when you take a position, why you're taking it, what the goal is, why you're there, and what benefit it serves you. Um, you have to give a position a chance, right? And if you're in a position, you've taken a position, it's for whatever reason, right? And if it has a position that has the potential for longevity or something that can be really developmental for you, if you're already 1 foot out the door, you can't fully give yourself a chance to experience, how is this position beneficial for me? How is it helping me to grow and develop? So if you know that, for example, I have a friend who's on a limited contract position. He knows that in June 2021, his position will be over. Should he be looking for a position? Absolutely. Should he spend every day of his current employment looking for a new position? No, that's not healthy, because then you're missing out on the ways that this position is growing and developing you. So that's when you create structure. It's, what is the expectation of when the current position ends? How can you add some boundaries to when you're searching and how you're searching, and make sure that everyone is on the same page? You may not realize that maybe you have the potential for a position to be extended. But if you're in a position where you feel like it's a terrible fit, why did I take this job in the first place? Then you really have to pause, talk to your stakeholders, your board of advisors, your mentors, and figure out what is a healthy way to both search for a new position while also making the best out of what you're in. But what I find the newer generation of student affairs professionals doing is thinking that the grass is always greener on the other side. And some folks are constantly thinking, oh, this feels good, but something could feel better. Or I saw a posting and that might be even better. It is a perpetual hamster wheel that you will find yourself on. So it's really important to take a step back. If you know that you have a position for a limited time, add some structure to that search. If you don't know if your position will be cut or not, it's having some candid conversations with your supervisor, with the administration where you're at, and saying, what does it look like for this position so that I can make sure I'm preparing myself effectively? And just at the end of the day, it's COVID. So making sure that you're keeping your resume updated, you're keeping your LinkedIn page updated, and you're keeping in contact with folks who are in positions that you could see yourself in the future.
Thank you. I think that's some great advice. Another question came in. Even if you're not able to find a role in a student affairs adjacent, people may simply need to find a job to sustain themselves. How would you kind of recommend they do that, but still find an opportunity where they can re-enter student affairs and a future higher ed job search?
So it's all about how you utilize your time. So for me, being involved in professional organizations, professional associations is so meaningful and so valuable. How I met Tom Ellett, who told me to write a letter to student affairs, is through Josh Hartman, who I met through participating through the TPE planning committee. So even though you're not in student affairs in a typical student affairs role, you still have an opportunity to be involved in some of these things. So thinking about outside the box, if you were in student affairs and now you're searching but having difficulty finding a position, you still have a network. So where can you volunteer? Are there opportunities to do some sort of mentorship or a leadership program? Are folks on college campuses looking for, the equivalent of big brothers and big sisters to support first generation college students? How can you be creative about what you can offer as far as your time, so that even though you may be working at Whole Foods, maybe, on the weekends or in the evenings, you get to participate in some sort of leadership academy or using your own network. Maybe you're affiliated with a sorority or a fraternity, and there's ways to be connected with populations of interest in that way. It just takes thinking outside the box and getting outside of your own head and using your village to help you think about ways that you can contribute to others. And you never truly leave the field. If you're engaged in webinars, if you're engaged in activities like this, if you're reaching out to people, if you're engaged on social media with folks who are in the field, you're still connected to the field. It's just that your title doesn't necessarily have a college or university connected to it. So it takes effort and energy, and no one is going to hold your hand through this. So you just have to make waves, get creative, and reach out to folks who are willing to help you get connected, like myself.
I think that was great advice. And as Nikia mentioned, look for some of that free content that various associations are putting out. TPE will continue to put different programs out, which we'll talk about here in a minute. In addition, I know NASPA, for example, has a transitional membership right now for individuals who are between jobs. So you should definitely check that out so you can still take advantage of association offerings. Last question, and just kind of wrap it up a little bit more tactical. What job search did you use or have you used to find jobs in higher ed that are for higher ed adjacent positions as you were searching?
You mean like the actual tool?
Yes.
So LinkedIn, so literally LinkedIn is how I found the job that I have now. Is the only place that my job posted at, even though they are higher ed adjacent. They were not using any higher ed boards. We're not exposed to higher ed jobs or TPE job search board or anything like that. So they were only using LinkedIn. And actually, in order to apply, I had to submit my LinkedIn profile, which I'd never done before. So LinkedIn is a great resource in that way, but it isn't the only one, right? So part of exposing yourself to what's out there and what are other companies using to find great candidates. But I do encourage you, you would be surprised at the number of people who use LinkedIn as a tool for job searching and posting. So if you do not have a LinkedIn profile, that is a great place to get a cross-reference of different folks in different industries, and a way to connect and, get yourself out there. It's like Facebook, but way more professional and way more opportunities for connection.
Great, thank you, Nikia. In addition, just to let that person know, Idealist has a lot of nonprofit jobs as well. Indeed is another search engine, and then a lot of local areas. So you can look at your government if you're doing a geographically based search. A lot of counties and cities will have, or statewide job searches as well. I want to be cognizant of time, so I'm going to ask you to wrap it up with the answer to our last question. Do you fear that not working on campus directly for the last year or so could discredit your applications in the future when you return to the field in an on-campus role?
I don't, because I am able to speak to the incredible work that I'm doing with college students and how I'm still working collaboratively with college administrators to really impact the students that I serve. So if anything, I think I have an advantage because I'm able to speak to, of the 70 students that I currently work with, they're at like 50 different institutions. So I've got a very wide breadth of experience of what it looks like to be a student at many different types of institutions right now. So if anything, I'm ahead of the game.
Great. Well, that is a great place to end today's story shorts. Like we said, they are definitely short. We want to have this snippet of time, hopefully to let a lot of people engage with TPE and our featured storyteller in different ways. I thank everybody for joining us today, especially Nakia as our featured storyteller. We will be doing this series twice a month. Our next one is the experience of a student affairs manager, specifically managing from the middle, how I successfully motivated my staff during difficult times. That will be this Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And then next Tuesday, we have a TPE Town Hall at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, showing up for work in the fall of 2020. And it's an opportunity, it'll be led by the TPE committee, to really think about how do we continue to show up for work in the field, given all of the challenges that we are facing on our college campuses. In particular during fall of 2020, a global pandemic, as well as everything else we are witnessing and experiencing in regards to racial violence, police brutality, an election year, financial security, lots of different aspects. So a place to kind of come and gather. This session has been recorded, so feel free to come back and watch it. Nakia mentioned so many great elements of her job search, and I think great advice to take with you. And then you can always follow up through the TPE email if you have questions that we can then also share with Nakia as the storyteller so that you can connect with her outside of this as well. So with that, Nakia, I'll let you kind of thank everyone and we will call it a day.
Thank you so much, everyone. If you have questions, again, just like Kirsten said, please send them to the TPE email address and I will be happy to answer those and connect with you offline.